You're listening to Women of Color Roar radio show on KNSJ FM in San Diego, 89.1. And we are always talking about people, politics, and policy. And we do it from an unapologetically Black point of view. I'm so excited to tell you the guest I have is a longtime friend, and I'm happy to have her on the show so we can catch up, but also to tell you about her amazing new book. It's called AfroCentric Style, a celebration of Blackness and identity in pop culture. And it's filled with more than 200 color and black and white photos. And it has lots of information about our cultural icons. And we're going to have a conversation about Black culture and what Black culture has meant to the overall culture, the impact and the influence that we've had. So welcome to the show, Shirley.
Well, thank you. It's so good to be here with you.
Well, it's really exciting when you come across people that you know and you see they're excelling in life and doing great things. You always have been. And I actually dressed for you today.
I love it. I love it.
Afrocentric wear for you. But we originally met when we were part of the Diners Club.
Mhm.
And we would meet with all these amazing, women of color, and
Mhm.
from for dinner once a month.
Right. Mhm.
And so much has happened in our lives since then. And you are an extraordinary producer and author, and all these amazing things. But we're going to talk about your book, your beautiful book. But I wanted to introduce the audience to you. So let's start by talking about Shirley Neal. Let's talk about where are you from?
Well, I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, but I tell people I'm an LA native because I've lived in Los Angeles for going on 46 years. So my whole adult life and my career has been in Los Angeles. I love it. It's home. And I always dreamed when I was living in Cleveland to come to California. Since I was like in sixth grade, I said, I'm going to go to California. I'm going to get involved with the entertainment industry. I'm going to be a writer. I'm going to be a producer. I'm going to have my own company. I'm going to run a company, and I'm going to write, and I'm going to retire authoring books. And guess what?
Look
It
at you.
happened. It
But
happened.
did you ever want to be in front of the camera? Did you ever want to be an actress?
Well, I tried acting. It was never a dream. I used it to get my foot in the door. And I did some acting. I did theater in Cleveland. I
Mhm.
worked with I worked at Karamu House, did some theater there, and I was a member of the Fairmount Theater of the Deaf.
Okay.
So I worked with hearing and deaf audiences. And actually, that's what got me to California. I was in California on vacation, and they were launching Children of a Lesser God at the Mark Taper Forum. They were
Mhm.
getting ready to launch it, and I just went to hang out. I wanted to see, I was excited that it was for deaf and hearing audiences, and I just wanted to see who was there. And I started signing with the deaf actors. And Gordon Hunt, who was running the program, Project Date at the time, he said, it's too bad you don't live here because we're going to start a workshop for deaf and hearing actors to learn how to work together. And you've got all that experience. Too bad you don't live here. And I said, how soon is it going to start and how long is it going to last? And I packed my bags and came out and never went back. And
You
so,
were and you were there. I totally relate to that story. So, I started off, I was going to college and I was studying, writing, and wrote to Essence Magazine and said I wanted to be a writer. I'm a writer, blah, blah, blah. And they gave me an assignment and ended up inviting me to come to New York and work on staff as an editor of Essence. And I was like, let me pack my little few bags from and get myself to New York City.
that's right. When that opportunity comes, it's like you take it.
Yes,
That's what you've been dreaming of.
absolutely. And and of course, this it's quite the ride. So you started there, and then what was next?
And so then it was the workshop was only 6 weeks, and I had come in at the tail end of it. So I was only here for a couple of weeks for it. and I had to start looking for work. And I ended up getting some small acting roles while I was working at KTTV in Los Angeles. At the time, it was a Metro Media station, not
Mhm.
Fox. And all of Norman Lear's shows were filming on that lot. So I'd go and hang out just on my lunch break. And as a result, I was able to get extra work. And then I eventually worked up to getting what they called special business, which is like 5 lines or less. And then I worked my way up to some lines. But it really wasn't what I wanted to do. It's not what I came out. I really wanted to do the behind the scenes, the writing, the producing. So I got a chance to do some ghost writing for Different Strokes.
Hmm.
I hooked up with a writer, and I was able to work on that, get my chops, together. And from there, I started directing, assistant directing for the Dodgers and creating promos for the Dodgers. And before you know it, I was pitching shows. And by then, Fox had come on board. They had bought up all the Metro Media stations. And I started trying to do productions with them, but they wouldn't let me do promos and production. And I was actually hired as a promo person. And I was doing the production on the side, the writing, the producing. And they're like, you can do one thing and we're going to pick it for you. It's going to be promotion. So I quit and
Oh.
started looking for other opportunities, and I got them. I worked with SI Communications, which was a small company that was working in radio.
Bob Dockery.
Bob Dockery, and he was wanting to expand into TV. So he gave me an opportunity. I ran his TV, started his TV division and ran that for him. I just spoke to him actually the other day. And from there, I was working on
Now
lifestyles.
let's talk about some of those productions though, because okay, what was the one? It was like, what was the African themed one? It was like the story of a people, or
Yeah,
what?
they were all pretty much African American themed. But yeah, Story of a People, it
Okay.
was a great series of
Yeah.
specials.
But I mean, we'd never really seen anything like that. It's
Yeah,
sort
and that was
of,
what was great about SI Communications. We produced programs that were ahead of its time. Story of a People really looked at themes that were close to African Americans, but we weren't seeing on air. We did one on Black Hollywood, we did one on gospel music, we did one on sports. So
there was one on dance that I also remember
on
too.
dance. So we did one on athletes that you never hear about. And now, and the people that you never hear about were Tiger Woods when he was a kid, Venus Serena when they were living in Compton. It was all these young people that no one was hearing about. We covered them, and now look at them. So it was ahead of its time. Then we produced Other Side of Victory, which was a sports series that Arthur Ashe hosted and co-produced. And that was the life of Black athletes behind the scenes. No one was doing that at the time. And we covered everyone. And we did a Laugh a Tear with
Mm-hmm.
Whoopi Goldberg. It was actually Whoopi Goldberg's first opportunity to executive produce. And she did a fabulous job, and she also hosted it. And we had all the Black comedians. We had Red Fox, we had Richard Pryor, we had the Wayans brothers. I mean, it was such a great show ahead of its time. So we really blazed some trails on that with that company.
Let me
And
ask you, because there's people who are starting out and they might want to know, how do they become a writer? So when you were going to school, you went to college, did you take particular classes? How did you work on your writing skill that allowed you to move into the roles in promotion and all the things you did?
yeah, I in college I studied mostly television production, because that was the direction that I thought would be the easiest to go into. In terms of actually writing, I just wrote. They always say, if you're going to write, you need to write, you need to read. And so I was always reading. I was reading what other people were writing, whether it was books or articles. And then I just started writing myself, and I would submit it like you did with Essence. I would just submit it every opportunity I had. And that's how I got a chance to really ghostwrite for Different Strokes, because I was just writing scripts. I was watching shows. I was watching the Jeffersons. I was watching Different Strokes. I was watching all these and I just started writing scripts. And then I would submit them. I met the writers on those shows and the story editors. And I said, do you mind reading my script and give me some feedback? And I've done that with writing articles. I've done it with all kinds of writing. You find people that can be your mentor and ask them if they have time, if you can. And I had to really hustle to get people to read my work, but
And you do have to be persistent.
you do.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I remember sending a tape of myself to someone who worked on, I think, I don't know, Entertainment Tonight or something. And oh, as a matter of fact, you know the person. Oh, Bob Reed.
Oh, okay. Yes.
And but he anyway, so he didn't look at my tape, and I would be like, when he's gonna look at my tape, and this went on and on. And then it was like, I'm gonna go up there and I'm gonna, anyway. And then he's like, oh, I got to see your tape, and da-da. And so so I would say be persistent, but know that these people are busy. But when they do, read your material, look at your tape, they are going to give you some feedback and open a door for you. So just, keep your attitude in check.
Exactly. And you can't take it personally. And I'm even running into that now with my book. Marketing has not, I've been a promotion person, but I've been away from it for a while, promos and publicity and marketing. And even though my publisher at HarperCollins has a publicity team, when you're a writer, you have to do a lot of the work yourself and you have to use your contacts. And I'm going to everybody I know and asking them, can you give me some promotion? Can you help me out with this? And you can't take it personal. You have to be persistent, but you have to know how far you can go. You don't want to be a pest. You have to know timing, but you have to believe in what you have, whatever kind of writing or producing or whatever it is you have that's creative.
That is absolutely true. So then the next step. So you were
Okay.
working and doing
Yeah, so
promotion.
I left SI Communications and I freelanced and I started freelancing with Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous.
Mhm.
So I did that for about 3 years and I was always a multitasker, so that was never enough. While I was doing that, I started producing promo videos and award videos for a lot of different award shows. Just short videos, whoever they were honoring, I would produce because I had that background in promotion and marketing. So I got connected with with NAPI, the National Association of Television Program Executives. I had produced some award videos for them, and the president approached me and said, "Would you like to work with us full time if I create a position for you? We need someone with your experience that can do these videos, that can do long form videos. And we want our live events, our general sessions to be like Broadway shows. We want a real show." And I had had some experience doing live events. So I worked with him for 8 years doing that. And I also have started my own production company. He was probably one of the best bosses I had in that he said, "I want you to do this, but I'm okay with you doing your own thing too." So at that time, I had launched my own production company and I was doing that simultaneously. And we were producing for Biography, A&E Biography. We were producing Travel Channel, Sci-Fi Channel, TV Land, you name it, BET, TV One. So I was really starting to expand more into production. And I was always writing as well as I was doing those things and never stopped even just kind of writing notes because I said, one day I'm going to write a novel and one day I'm going to write a nonfiction book. And that had become my hobby. And so I worked with NAPI for about 8 years. And then my company started to take off. So I left NAPI. I was doing some live events, starting to produce the LA Emmy Awards, the regional Emmy Awards here in Los Angeles, and other live events. And then Bob Reed recruited me to help him launch the Africa channel.
Mhm.
And so I was there for 8 years. See, like 8 years was always my magic numbers. Eight years at KTTV, 8 years at at Africa Channel, 8 years at NAPI. And so I started working with the Africa Channel, And that was an incredible experience for me. And I was always excited about Black culture
Mhm.
and identity. And that really helped me working there because I had an opportunity to travel to Africa many times. We had an office in South Africa that I oversaw. So I was in South Africa a lot. I was in East Africa, West Africa. I probably made about 50 trips in just a couple of years, just going
Mhm.
back and forth, and just fell in love with our culture and our heritage. And I think the most memorable trip was going to Sierra Leone with Isaiah Washington.
Mm,
And
yes.
it was really because I had traced my maternal lineage to Sierra Leone,
Mhm.
and he had traced his lineage, and he had been trying to get someone to follow him there, whether it was a news reporter, he had been pitching to Ebony, if it was a TV station, nobody would bite. And he came to Little Africa Channel, and I was running programming at the time. And I said, I'll do it. And I'll also write an article for you for Ebony, because I was writing with Ebony at the time as well. Always, again, multitasking.
Mhm.
And so we had a film crew follow us to Sierra Leone, where he became the first African American to get dual citizenship in an African country based solely on DNA confirmation.
Oh
And
my God.
so while we were able to photograph his visit there, I was able to have time alone and just visit the place where my ancestors were from, and then write about it also for Ebony. So that was just a highlight for me.
Yeah, it's interesting. And now I'm like, okay, I need to read now your biography. I need to, I mean, with all this, the backstories on all these different, these different people. But talking about the Africa Channel, and I know that one of the things that you all did was you filmed a special that was for Prince. Or
Yes,
was he Prince or was he a symbol at the at the
he was Prince, and
artist formerly known as Prince?
yeah, he was back with being Prince,
Yeah.
and owned it well. He had come to Los Angeles, or was coming to Los Angeles, with his 21 night stand at the Forum in Los Angeles, and his intent was to perform 21 shows that were affordable for whole families that could come. I can't recall the price. I think the
It
tickets were
was
just
$25.
$25.
I know because I went.
And
And I
he
took
taught,
people, and
yeah,
it was a different show every time we went. I mean,
he, it was
different different
incredible.
opening act, different performances. And one
Yeah.
night, after people kept clapping, and he says, and he would come back out and he would do another. He says, you know how many hits I have? We could be here all night if you, you know. So
And that it's interesting because I was there for all but one of the 21 nights. And I think he only performed one song twice, but he had enough. Yeah, his library was vast enough of hits, not just his songs, but of his hits. And when he did his encores, of course, he repeated songs, but as part of his main set, he just had so much music, and it was a delight to work with him. He had wanted to also have this televised, and he was careful who he trusted,
yeah,
and he did trust the ownership at Africa Channel, and we did him good, and we made sure that we covered the backstage, and we ended up producing a TV special around his doing this, and it was nominated for an NAACP Image Award. So we were pretty proud of that.
that was real, and getting him to agree because he was very meticulous about
Oh,
his
oh.
image and who he worked with. And but let's talk about Prince for a minute. We're talking about style here. Okay, let's talk about the eyeliner, the hair, the heel. Tell me your take on Prince, his style, and his evolution, because he came back from, the relaxed hair. He came all the way back to Afro.
Yeah, and then he went back to relax. Yeah, I think it was very Prince. I think what I respected the most about Prince is He was unapologetically himself. He didn't care who thought what about his style. He was a trendsetter. And I remember meeting him. He had us at his home one night after the show. And it was when he did one of his all night sets, and he told the band to come back and everything was at the home. But he was playing host to those of us he had invited. And it was the first time I was that close to him. And I could see the makeup and the eyeliner and whatnot, but it didn't look fake. It didn't look odd. It looked like it was quintessential Prince. It was natural. It was, and because he exuded so much personality, just looking at him, it was just part of him. And so you see it on some artists, and you think, okay, that's part of their act, their fashion style. But this was just him, and it was very natural. And he was actually one of the sweetest artists I've met. Just a genius, but also just a gentle soul.
You know, it's interesting because you would not think of that gentle. When you think about Prince, that would not be an adjective that would come to mind. But I just want to give a station ID. You're listening to KNSJ FM in San Diego, 89.1. This is Angela D. Joseph on Woman of Color Roar radio show. My guest is Shirley Neal, the author of AfroCentric Style, a celebration of Blackness and identity in pop culture. So I want to talk about some other icons. So let's talk about Beyonce. And you know, I still have silver jacket that I probably will never wear again. I got for the concert. But let's talk about her and, you know, even with Cowboy Carter, you know, the fact that people didn't even remember or know that Black people were cowboys. So, let's talk about Beyonce for a minute.
Okay. So actually, I start one of the first stories in my book, outside of my introduction, is about Beyonce. And I don't start with speaking of her as Cowboy Carter. Later in the book, I talk about cowboys, but in the beginning, I speak about how she was featured as a Super Bowl attraction, dressed exactly as Michael Jackson was dressed as a Super Bowl attraction maybe 10 years earlier. And that a lot of people spoke about how, oh, she did that because Michael Jackson was her idol. So what I do is I dispel that myth right away and talk about why she actually dressed the way she did. And at that time, she'd been getting a lot of pushback for not owning her Blackness. And that was really her opportunity to show the world that I'm Black and I'm proud. And I'm also angry. And it was at a time when we were hearing more and more about our Black men being gunned down, unarmed Black men being gunned down by police officers. And she had had enough. And so she kind of called on the spirits of the Black Panther of yesteryear. So her outfit was very Michael Jackson, but it had a touch, a big touch of Black Panther in it. And
Mhm.
she had her girls all dressed like Black Panther, and she really wanted to send a message that she was kind of sick and tired of what was going on. And I use her story, and I delve into it more. So hopefully people will get the book and find out the rest of the story. But one of the reasons I wanted to start with that is it's a great example of how we look at a pop culture figure and we see one thing. You know, we saw her dressed like that. She was great. She looked like Michael Jackson. She was celebrating Michael Jackson, but there's something we don't know. And there's something that if you study it and you know about it, it helps us better understand and celebrate our Black history. Because I go on to talk about the Black Panthers, who they were, a lot of things that we don't know about them. Why did they dress the way they did? Why are we copying their style? Why is it all of a sudden popular now? Why are people like Michael B. Jordan and Rihanna now wearing or at that time starting to wear the Black Panther look? Why are these young kids wearing it? Do you know about the Black Panther? So it was a great way to start the book, to say, if you find something that was trending in pop culture that you followed, take a moment, take a deep breath, and learn what we can celebrate about that in our culture at the same time. So I use symbols like that all through the book. I take pop culture moments and memories and images, and I show us a connection to our culture and history and our Blackness.
Well, it's interesting because I guess it's a generational thing.
Mhm.
Because as soon as I saw her, I thought about the Black Panthers. So
Okay,
when I
okay.
was growing up, I had that poster of Huey Newton on my wall, with the beret and sitting in the chair and but let's talk
Well, let
about
me ask you this, if I can.
hair.
So, even when we talk about generational, how much did you know about the Panthers? Was it
Well,
really?
what I know about the Panthers is, well, growing up in Los Angeles, and I know about the Panthers and us and the rivalry, and I know about, the shooting at UCLA, and there's a lot that I know about the Panthers.
But
So,
about their dress, why did they
so,
wear those
so
clothes?
I know. So tell me,
Yeah,
why did
well,
they do?
it's in the book. Those are the kinds of things that
Yeah,
I do
yes.
have in the book, what the origins are. And I think that's it. It's a good, I'm glad you brought that up, that it's generational. This book is for everyone. Someone like you, right away, you thought Black Panthers, but it's interesting to delve deep and find out how did they really get started and why did they come up with that, the black beret and the jacket, and why did they transition to the camo jackets? So that's for our generation. And then for the younger ones, it's so that's why I'm wearing this. I never realized that. Now let me. So it's really, you're right, it's generational.
Yes, but to understand the story behind it. So I really appreciate being able to learn about that in your book. But a couple of things I want to talk about in terms of icons that, hair, when it comes up to our hair. Now, story that I've heard over and over was that Cicely Tyson was the first one to wear an afro on a television show. Um, and so I don't know if that's true or not, but I want to talk a little bit about where we've come from in terms of our hair, the importance of it in terms of the statement that it makes, the political statement, because definitely when we went through the Say It Loud on Black Am I Proud, and we went through the Afro period, and then now you see people being able to wear their hair in braids, locks at work, which is something that I was not able to do when I was in the corporate world. So tell me a little bit about your perspective on the Black with our hair and the statements that's been made politically and socially with our hair.
Well, the good news is that it's changing. It's changed a lot, and it's continuing to change. And as for the Cicely Tyson reference, it's interesting because I long believed that she was one of the first to wear an afro on TV, and I had that in the first draft of my book. And I even had a picture of her on East Side, West Side, and and she was. Um, but what I had wrong in my first draft was that she was the first Black woman on TV wearing it. And so she was the first wearing the afro, but she wasn't the first Black woman on a drama on TV.
Oh, I see.
So one of the things that, and I just bring that up because as I was researching, as I say, that was in my first draft, as I kept researching and researching, that's what you have to do with books like this. You have to dig so deep. I learned a lot, and I was discovering things. So it's another good reason for people to read the book, because it will dispel some myths that we've been living with forever. But yes, she was the first to wear the afro on TV. Um, and that was a long time ago. And when she was doing East Side, West Side. And that was a show that actually got a lot of protest in the South, and is why it was taken off the air. Um, Partly because she was Black, but partly because her hair, they thought it made her look like a man. She had it was one of the very short, close cropped afros. And you look fast forward, and we can wear our hair now pretty much any way we want. And if you've ever noticed now, here recently on commercials, I've been noticing that you see very few people of color wearing their hair straight. Now they're wearing it braided and coiled, bald, and natural, because I think we've finally arrived. We have the choice. I think one of the things that I speak about is that's how it should be. It should be choice. I write about how I do um, one small sub chapter called Unbelievable, and how we get a bad rap for wearing straight hair weaves or wearing our hair straight. And it really isn't about, is your hair straight or natural? It should be about choice. And I think now we do have choice. And so I kind of cover the evolution of everything from natural hair to straight hair to weaved hair to locked hair to baldness. And I think the overarching theme is that we've come a long way. We've had pushback, but now we pretty much can do whatever we choose. And that's something that I think is very helpful for young girls.
Well,
And I spent some
I
time.
think it's important because, being able to embrace your natural hair as it grows out of your head it's very powerful. And to not be raised feeling that in order for you to fit in or be accepted, you have to do something. You must put these chemicals on your head. You must go through this torturous treatment with this hot implement and burn your scalp. That you don't have to do that. You can just wear your hair where it grows out of its head, and learning how to take care of your natural hair. But I wanted to make the point about the political statement, because when I first had an afro, it was about us being part of a Black Power movement. It was not just a style. It was about saying something. And so, I had red, black, and green jewelry and a little fist on my. And then when I went to my father's house, it was like, no, you gotta straighten your hair. You can't have. And that's because the era that my father grew up in, you know it was important for them to be quiet and fit in, and so they could keep their job. They couldn't walk in and be, black, so that was so for his generation. And the same thing, my aunts, they all were like, oh, your family's, we're not from Africa, we're from Trinidad.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, didn't we like start in Africa and they dropped us off in Trinidad? But but that was again, I'm talking about generations,
Right,
that generation had to straighten their hair, had to dress a certain way, had to, certain things, because that was the only way they could survive, keep their job, feed their family. Because
yes,
if you wanted to act out in a different way, you were not going to keep your job. And I
right,
think that for young people, they need to understand that there's generations before who did not have the luxury of doing their own thing.
right.
So it wasn't, they couldn't just, yeah. So, when I show up and I have a big, Angela Davis fro, um, for them, they felt threatened because it was something they couldn't do. And so I'm happy now that you can, wear your hair how you like. But I think understanding that there are people that came before you that fought and so that you could be in the position now to wear your hair how you want, which brings us to the Crown Act that
Right.
Holly, in did come and she came down here, and we honored her for the Crown Act.
Okay,
Uh,
good.
yes, yes. So, and which is it's a piece of legislation basically. And I had so many white women say to me, "Why do you need that? Why do you?" And I'm saying, because we're discriminated against for how we wear our hair. They couldn't understand
Right.
that was why we needed this legislation to say that you can't discriminate against us based on our hairstyle.
Right. And one thing that I do, and I don't want it to be missed when I say we have choice now. And it's also, if you want to wear your hair straight, you can, and you don't need to be shamed for it. And I tell a story of wearing my hair. I just choose to wear my hair straight. It's maintenance free for me. And I do speak to that if that's what you choose, you should be able to also do that. It doesn't mean I'm selling out on my sisterhood or my Africanness. It just says I have a choice and this is what I choose. So I kind of cover the gamut. I cover the historical aspects of it, how it's changed because of the Crown Act, but ultimately it's about being comfortable in your skin and choosing to wear your hair the way you want to wear it.
And that's, I think, what we're talking about with Black women today is that we are full, full citizens and free to make choices and do as we please. And but I think the idea of how many people try to emulate our culture and
Right.
appropriate our culture, and which one of the controversies that I know went through was when the movie 10 came out with Bo Derek, and she had her hair in cornrows, and
Mhm.
suddenly it became, oh, this exotic Bo Derek style. And and even seeing today where I believe it was the football player um was wearing a fade, and they started to think that that was his hairstyle, but he'd gone to a black barbershop
Mhm.
and gotten that
Mhm.
look. So there's something about black culture that is creative, visionary, extraordinary, that people want to duplicate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's a sense of pride in that and a reason to celebrate that. Again, hence the subtitle, A Celebration of Blackness and Identity in Pop Culture.
Yes, and we need to celebrate where it is, because there's a lot of fashion designers who
Mhm.
have gone to the continent of Africa, gotten prints, come back, duplicated it, and then it's on high fashion houses, very expensive pieces, and never giving credit to the
Right.
origins of those patterns.
Exactly, exactly. And when you talk about appropriation and misappropriation, one of the sections I have in my book is uh, shades and shapes of blackness. And I did that because first of all, it's an issue. Our color, our skin color, our skin tone, what it's doing for young people. If I'm too dark, if I'm too light, if my butt's too big or not. As a kid, I mean, I had curves, and I remember being embarrassed that my butt was big. Um, and now you see people paying to have that butt. And so I talk about that in the book, and I go back to the history of shaming with our features, including our butt and our eyes and our
Our
nose,
lips. And
our lips, and
yeah, one of
how.
one of my friends, Iona Morris, she did a one woman show, and she talked about how her mother would make her get on the floor and scoot on her butt to make it flatter. Yeah.
I never heard that. Oh my God.
Yes. So, and then of course when she grew up, it became her calling card, her butt. She said, because everybody looked there, so and yes, that's one of the things. But I want to talk about this, the idea of style and what's high style, because Vogue magazine and those magazines did not feature us for a long time, and the idea of what was high fashion and what was elegant and so on had a particular picture. And I can tell you for a fact, when I worked at Essence magazine, that I was the associate fashion beauty editor, and I went to Chanel to a meeting, and I was asking why they didn't have any black women in their ads. And the woman told me point blank, it's because that's not how they wanted to be represented. And I said, well, I guess you don't want us to write about you then, right? So, but the idea that that was their imagery was one thing, and what they wanted to show. But what was interesting to me is that when Dynasty came on, and we were like all caught up in the opulence of Dynasty, and then finally when Diane Carroll came out, we said yes.
Mhm.
Dominique Devereaux, and she had her furs, and she had her, and because I know black women like that. I mean, Eunice Johnson of Ebony and
Ebony.
Jet. Yes, Eunice Johnson. and Joan Johnson from the other Johnson Products Company. Those were two Black women I saw in furs and diamonds and
Eartha
gold
Kitt.
plates. Or, so there, that was, or even if you look at pictures, even going back to ragtime, you look at the pictures of some of the Black women in that time period, how they dressed.
Right, right.
Yeah, so the whole idea of the style thing, and I know that when the television show Designing Women was on, also it was all white women, and Shirley Ralph told me she saw the producer at something, and she went up to him and she said, "Shame on you that you have a show taking place in Atlanta and you don't have any Black women." And they cast her on the show, and but when
And you
they
know what I like about that? And I remember hearing that story, and that's another thing. Speak up. When you don't see it, say something. you
oh
know,
oh
that's how I that's how I got to be a producer and writer on a series for, at the time, before TV Land was just running a bunch of repeats. At one point, in, I think it was around 20 maybe 2004 or 2005, they were running some original shows, and they had this series of shows called TV Land Presents, and they did one on African Americans in television, and I was so excited. It was going to be 3 hours,
mm,
drama, comedy, and variety. I was so excited when I read about it. And then I looked to see who was behind it. And it was a production company, a white production company. It was actually Rosenthal Productions, who I had worked with on Lifestyles of Rich and Famous. So I called her to congratulate her and see, how many people do you have researching and working and producing on there? And she said, none. I was just, how can you do a show, a three-part series on African Americans in television, and you have zero people involved? And so I right away I said, you sign me up. I need to be on this team. And so she hired me to be a writer and producer on there. You speak up. You don't see it, speak up. Don't complain about it. Go to that per do like Shirley did, do what I did. Go to them and say, come on, folks.
here in San Diego was a totally different city when I first came down here. But the newspaper of record, the San Diego Union Tribune, the way they covered us or didn't cover us, and I wrote a letter to the publisher and I went in, had a meeting with them, and anyway, I ended up getting a consulting contract, and I taught a class for the entire newsroom of the
Okay,
newspaper over the course of a year about how to cover our community, and showing them the type of headlines that they were doing that were inappropriate, the type of
good.
pictures that they were showing, because don't show Black women, they show Black women always looking one. I'm like, no, here's another type of picture you can show. And just a lot of things about fetishizing us and the things that they were doing. But it was, to this day, I still run into people who were photographers, editors at the paper, who all tell me how much it changed
Oh, good.
how they did the news and how they did the paper. But
Excellent.
again, but we have to do that. And this is really what advocacy is being willing to step out there and challenge the norms, because they're going to continue to leave us out of the stories. Like, how you do a story? We're not even in the story, and so it's important for us to make them, call them out, and make the point. But the other thing
Exactly.
is that, as you and I both know, in television, how many times did you hear, "Oh, we couldn't find anybody that was Black. Oh, we just didn't know anybody." And so I kept a list of Black writers that I would fax over, you
Mhm.
know, and they would be like, "Oh," and when I filmed my TV infomercial, the production company, I said, you have to have at least half of the people on the crew have to be Black people.
Mhm.
And then right when we got up to production, I was like, "Oh, the one person that we knew, the camera person, he's not available." One person in all of Los Angeles that you knew. I got on the phone, and I got a Black woman, and I got a Black man. Had the Black sound person. I had an Asian, art director. I had, but I had to take the responsibility to do it. And that's what advocacy is about. And that's what I want to encourage.
Absolutely.
Um, the next generation to continue to speak up as you have, and also learn the history. So that,
Exactly. Yeah.
yes.
And as we speak on that, I write about in fashion Kirby Jean Raymond, who is just an incredible designer. A lot of people don't know about, but he was at showing at New York Fashion Week often. But he was one of the first to dare to bring race to the runway, in that he had taken a break from showing, and then he decided, I'm going to come back. Everyone was very excited about his designs for New York Fashion Week, and he said, no, I wanted to be in Weeksville, black, one of the oldest black communities in the country. And
Mm.
he sent everybody, if you want to be in my show, you need to come to Weeksville. And then when you got to his show in the rain, people bust in the rain, they got a history lesson. And he played black anthems, and had all of his models were black, and he made you think about and learn about black cowboys and Rosetta Tharpe. Every time you went to one of his shows, or um, uh, just about any kind of black cultural icon you could think of, you walked away with a history lesson. Madam C.J. Walker, Oda Binga, and I appreciate that, because he saw that they were lacking. It wasn't just about, we need to have more black fashion designers. He said we need to go deeper than that. We need to have our history and our culture. He even said, I'm glad to see that there's more black designers. That's not enough. You have to allow us to also be able to tell our stories. And so I cover one whole chapter is just on him, and what we can learn through his fashions, and through what he's done on the runway.
It's interesting that it's almost sometimes where you see a black model, but it's almost, I'm not sure exactly that explains, but it's like she's a piece of art.
Mhm.
And so, you know what I mean? That they it's like, oh, look at our beautiful black model. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so, one thing that I've noticed over the years, that there used to be only light-skinned black models on the runway at one point. And so you weren't really even sure if they
Mhm.
were black or not, you know. And then I know Essence would always put them in Essence. So that was how I knew that they were black. But then they got into a thing where they started to have darker skinned, and then they started to go to Africa, and they needed to, and got these beautiful, radiant, dark black models. But part of it is, yes, we're there, but I also want to caution the idea somehow that you are using our beauty and our color to somehow enhance what you're selling, as opposed to really us being incorporated into the fashion world. So maybe you can say that better than I just said.
Well, I think you said it well. It can't really be about us and them. It needs to be about beauty. It needs to be about fashion. It doesn't really need to be about race. And if you're going to make it about race, then let's learn something about it. Like I say, as Kirby did. And I think we're seeing that. I think there's a little more inclusiveness now. I think people like Rihanna and ASAP Rocky, they're starting to get in with Pharrell Williams now heading YSL. I think you're starting to see more and more of exactly what you're saying. It's not just us and them. It's now we're seeing that there's some equality there in fashion, how we display it, how we make it, and how we come across.
Well, the part that will be equality is when we own the fashion house and when we're the recipient of the bulk of the money that's coming into to an industry. Now, one industry that I know that we started, which was the black hair care business, which, going back to Madam CJ Walker, and I work for Johnson Products Company. And so, I know that, these companies had the products for black hair, and then it was duplicated by the white companies, and then the white companies ended up taking over the whole industry. And so that source of revenue, even in the beauty supply source, I mean, in the community, the revenue is not staying in the community. And so, I mean, I'm a big proponent of recycling our black dollars. And so it's good. Yeah, it's nice to be there, but how are the economics?
Mhm.
Is it pay equity? I want to know, are the black models paid as much? Are they paid, who's the production companies being selected? Where's the money going, and how does that help lift up our community?
Yeah, I don't know the answers to that. I think, as I say, with
Or
Pharrell.
rhetorical questions.
Yeah, well, with Pharrell stepping in, heading up YSL, and Virgil Abloh did it, and Rihanna had a deal running. These are the creative directors, the highest position that you can get. With them stepping up, we're starting to see the change. Even with Dapper Dan, he got his hand slapped for appropriating logos from high-end fashion designers. But then when they tried to steal his looks, then they had to, he cried foul, and then they welcomed him into the Gucci house, and they were able to give him his own line, Dapper Dan by Gucci. So I think slowly it's happening, but I agree with you. I think we need to, the more we can move up the ladder in those houses, and I think it's coming. I know it was a rhetorical question, but I think it is.
I know. The reason I'm saying that is now Rihanna, for example, has her Fenty line of makeup that she is getting royalties,
Mhm.
and which is very significant. There have been situations where, as you know, people license their name, and then the license period is over. The brand is now established, and they no longer are connected with the brand, and they no longer get any funding from it. Meanwhile, when their name was on it, it brought the black population in, and we spent our dollars. And we have a tremendous amount of money that is spent, by the black community. And so making decisions to spend our money with the companies that are giving the black designers royalties and part of the commission, and making sure that people are paid well is, I mean, I just feel like it's part of the responsibility of those of us in the community that have the wherewithal to
Right.
to check it out, and to, if necessary, call on those companies to do the right thing. It's, I mean, if somebody who it's, I mean, it's easier to say than when you're somebody looking for a job. It's a different situation than when for somebody to come and speak up on your behalf.
Right, right, right.
Yeah. But I mean, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the people now. There's some other people that are style icons. I mean, Nicki Minaj. I mean, and I remember when she first started, and I was just like, pink hair, huh? Pink. Okay. But then everybody started wearing pink hair,
Mhm.
so it's always like we're always like the trendsetters.
Exactly. And I cover that as well. Afrocentric Style, the title is a little deceiving, which is why I have the subtitle leading the title on the book, A Celebration of Blackness and Identity in Pop Culture. The first four chapters, I do deal with fashion, but the book is even, I also cover hair and beauty. It's really as much about of celebrating our identity and culture. We do have some style fashion setters. I talk about that even more so in the hair section. I have afros, attitudes, and other main attractions is the chapter, and I spend a lot of time talking about how we were when our women went bald, then it was popular for all women to go bald. When we started wearing the cornrows, then it was popular. So I do cover quite a bit of how we were the arbiters of style, not just in our community, but just worldwide. And a lot of it did have to do with our hair. If you look around now, how many afros are you seeing? When we brought the afro back,
Mhm.
when we stopped wearing the afro and we started going to the locks, now how many lock wearers do you see who aren't just of color?
Yeah.
But we are absolutely the arbiters of style. I think even more so with our hair. And I cover a lot of that in the book.
What is your thoughts about cultural appropriation, though, in terms of, seeing people, for example, dressed in a person, Caucasian person dressed in African garb? What is your thought about that?
I have mixed feelings, but in the book I talk about some of the things that have been misappropriated from our culture, and then, but you can hear the non-Black um, side saying, "Yeah, but what did you guys appropriate from us?" I think is we can't be hypocrites about it. If we see someone a Bo Derek wearing our braids, I can't criticize her without her saying, "Well, why do you wear your hair straight?" That's us. So I think there's you can take offense, but you also have to kind of look in the mirror. I think it's a little of that on both sides, quite honestly. In terms of fashion, if I were to see someone wearing African garb, and I've seen it. I've seen um, people wearing our African kente cloth and whatnot. I think it's context. I think it's how they're wearing it. I in the book I show um, Congress wearing kente scarves and shawls and kneeling for a moment of silence over the killing of George Floyd. And that got a lot of pushback on social media. Nancy Pelosi and some of the other white Congress people wearing it. They wore it out of solidarity with the Black members of Congress, the Congressional Black Caucus. They wore it in solidarity for them. Their intentions were good. It just missed the point. Um, and so I think a lot of it is in context. Did I get upset when I saw them doing it? I raised an eyebrow. I thought, well, I get the kneeling. I'm okay with that, but I wonder why you wore the kente. Um, I'm not so sure I'm comfortable with that. So I think some of it is context. When I realized, Karen Bass at the time, she was a member of she was the head of the CBC, and she responded. Karen Bass, who is now mayor of LA, and she was basically saying that wasn't intended to show any disrespect or to misappropriate. These are not her words. I'm paraphrasing
Oh, no,
her
yes.
sentiment. But it was a show of solidarity for us. Don't get mad at that. You're missing the point. It was to show that we're with you. We support you in what was being done to George Floyd was wrong, and let us take a moment of just quiet acknowledgement of that. Let's kneel in peace and togetherness. So when you think about the context, it makes sense. So I kind of
I agree
take.
with you. I agree with you. I think that, it's one thing in a setting like that where you're showing solidarity, but it's another thing when somebody's getting credit for a style
Mhm.
that was originated by African people. So, and that's in nowhere in anything does it say this was originally, other than us, when we speak up and tell you that, that was originally cornrows that from our, that our mothers did, our grandmothers did, so I think that, being able to get credit, I think, for our creativity, our ingenuity, and our history, and
And
our
monetizing it, I think that's when it becomes I think where you were headed before, when you're making a lot of money off of it, off of what we've created or what we originated, and we get no credit, no respect, no monetary benefits from it, then that's when it is an issue. Even what you're wearing right now, it's a design of kente cloth. Kente cloth was created in West Africa, but what you're wearing is a print, I believe. I can't see it completely. Well, that print was more than likely designed in China, and it was
Not
more
this,
than,
not this print.
well, many of
Yeah,
them.
but not this one. I
Okay,
know where
okay,
this one came from. So
okay. Well, many of
the
them.
woman who made this for me is actually she's from West Africa, and this fabric I picked out this fabric.
Okay, okay. Well, many
No,
of
but
them.
no, but many no, you're right.
Many are, yeah. Valesco, he created the wax prints based on what the Kenta cloth design was, and it's interesting because he will admit, this is not me, this is not my creation. I just improved on it. And it's interesting, I mentioned in the book that there are some African Americans who don't want the original Kenta cloth. They rather wear a wax print. So, yeah, so everyone's making money off of what
That's
was
I
originally.
was gonna say I have right behind me. I have some mud cloth pillows, and but I have actual mud cloth. Oh, really? Actually, right here on my table, I have actual mud cloth. That's actual mud cloth. But I do have some pillows that are print.
Mhm. That are
And
print.
so, yes. And so there is, but I do think that being able to learn about the things that are from the motherland originally, how, they've made it into modern day widespread, culture around the world. The celebration, as you said, that's what I'm talking about, is that I want the celebration to be from the people that actually created it. And I know that Willie Morrow, who was the person who actually created the curl, he was the person to take the Afro picks, because every tribe, I guess, had a different carved Afro pick, and he took it and he manufactured it in plastic. This is a black man, and he was able to sell Afro picks all over, and become very wealthy from that. But it was originally wood carved in different tribes. Each had their own different type of hair pick. And so he says we were separated from our comb for 200 years. And then, until we got our Afro pick over here in America. So,
Mhm.
Shirley, I really appreciate all the work that you've done and the things that you're talking about. What about in other types of ways do you feel that you see the influence of our culture?
Beyond what's
Yeah, beyond just the entertainment business, I know, like, if it's in, I don't know if it's architectural, or what other areas have you noticed that you've seen influence?
well, actually, when I pitched this book, it was a lot um, more vast than it is now. Right now, it covers fashion, hair, and beauty, but I had Black art, architecture, as you say, literature, all forms of entertainment. We're everywhere, and it took a publisher. My publisher is HarperCollins, to say, bring it on in. We know we're everywhere. And it's HarperCollins Amistad, which is the Black imprint of HarperCollins. And my editor said, we know we're everywhere, but we need to start. Get
Yeah.
small. Let's just
Okay.
start here. Let's
Yeah.
start with fashion,
Yeah.
hair, and
Yeah.
beauty, if that's what you want, or creative expression. But yeah, we are all over, and our influence is strong, and it's becoming more and more apparent because we are speaking out about it. You're hearing, I didn't want this to be a book about Black firsts, but there are a lot of Black firsts out there, and we're hearing more and more about it, and beyond just Black History Month. And I'm glad about that. And then you'll start to see that we are everywhere. Our influence is everywhere.
I just was reminded of things sometimes that happen, early that I didn't get to talk about at the time because I didn't have the wherewithal at the time. But when the movie Mahogany came out about a black, fashion woman who was a fashion model, I just thought, well, you know what? I didn't even really, maybe I wasn't old enough. I don't know, but I didn't realize, kind of how forward thinking that was to make a film about her and her life, and somebody who was in high fashion and in that world. And I remember when I saw Boomerang, and I think it was took place at a black advertising agency, and I had worked with Burrell, black advertising agency in Chicago. So I mean, I had seen that. I had seen a company with, black creative executives and all of that life. And so to be able to see it reflected in a movie was so, so positive.
Yeah, we are everywhere, and behind the scenes in particular, and and as I say, it's starting to come to the forefront. If you just look at our films that are coming out, how many black films are you seeing? Not even just black films are you seeing in general that are from black helmed production companies and directors and producers. So we're coming up. We've been there, but now we're just coming to the forefront.
Well, I think that, Wakanda was sort of, you know, forever will that always be something that will be a sense of pride because they were regal, they had their own country, they were high tech. I mean, so much, and I mean so much positive imagery in one film. So we've got, we have movies, we've got TV, you've got so many places
Mhm.
where we see these, images
Mhm.
that clearly were, originally came from the vision of a person of African descent.
Right. And when you speak about what Wakanda and Wakanda Forever, that is a fictional nation. But what I love about it is, and I talk about this in the book, that even with Ruth Carter, who was the fashion designer, she'll tell you she spent a lot of time in Africa looking at authentic costumes from different tribes. So she took what she could draw from all of these real living, breathing African tribes, and she used that to create Wakanda,
Mhm.
basically that look. So once again, we do have the Black origins, even in our fiction. So it's very, very believable. I mean, a lot of people really think Wakanda, even with
That it's a real country, huh?
that it's a real country.
That's how, but even television shows, people think, that that's really the character, you
Mhm.
know. And so, do you have your book right there? Because we'll put
I
up, let me, yeah, hold it up. It's beautiful. I love that. It's beautiful. So, Afrocentric style. So, what was just tell us what was your motivation for writing the book and where can we get it?
Well, I initially wanted to write a book about my travels in Africa. And as I said, I had spent so much time in Africa, and I really wanted to write about my travels and talk about my home is just infused with a lot of African design. All of my homes that I've ever lived in, I've designed them with African and African American and contemporary American style. And I wanted to write a book where I talked about Africa, talked about my travels, let you know the country, the customs, and just infuse my story in it. And it somehow evolved into this. And in this book, I do weave a lot of my personal experiences in here so that you can see I'm not just looking in a textbook about where this came from in Africa. It's something that I actually experienced. So the book evolved. It took about 2 years to finish, and then we ran into COVID, and so it was on the shelf for a while. And then I updated it, but it's just packed with a lot of uh, I think entertaining images that you'll recognize, some you won't, but a lot of stories, behind the scenes stories to them that you probably never knew, or you can get a deeper understanding about. It's available pretty much everywhere where books are sold, online and in store. I just did a book signing at a Barnes and Noble. It's everywhere. And it's a great holiday gift. I'm really letting
No, I
people
was
know,
just,
it's not
you
just
were
for
reading
Black
my
History
mind.
Month,
I was
folks.
just thinking about, okay, now I know what I'm getting people for Christmas.
It's
They're
a great holiday book.
it's a beautiful book. And also I know people that absolutely will appreciate, what the time and what you've put into the book.
And it's for everyone. It's really, like, as I say, young people will learn things they never will get in school. And for our generation and my parents' generation, it'll have them saying, wow, I didn't realize that. I didn't know this. Quite a few people who have been coming to book signings pre-ordered it online. So when they're coming to me and bringing it and I'm signing it, I'm hearing the same thing. And this is what I wanted. I didn't know this. I learned so much. I'm going to buy it as a gift. So I'm urging people, get it as a great holiday Kwanzaa gift. Don't just wait till Black History Month to read it. Get it.
Absolutely. And so, well, if you ever come to San Diego, let me know. I'll probably be in LA before you maybe come down here, but there is actually a thriving community down here, and then obviously Women of Color Roars, my event, which is February 1st, which you are invited to come. It will be epic as it always is, and but I'm really happy to see you and hear about what you're doing, and I can't wait to read your book. It's going to be I guess that'll be my holiday reading. So once I, how it is in the grind right now, but we'll have a couple down days that I'll be able to focus on it. But so what's next? You're doing a book tour, and what's next?
What's next is I'm working on a novel I'm very excited about. So if I think I'll use the holiday to get back to it. I put it on hold for a minute. And then I am developing a project. My partner, two partners, James Pickens Jr. From Grey's Anatomy, and Justin Chambers, who was an original cast member of Grey's Anatomy. We are developing a project that we're not announcing just yet, but I hope to be able to announce early part of next year. So it's a limited series. And so
Okay.
I'm kind of going back and forth between writing, literary writing, and producing. I'm not doing as much producing because I really want to devote as much time as I can to my literary writing, but I can pick and choose now. I only look at those projects that mean the most to me for television and film. So that's what's coming up next.
Well, Shirley Neal, you are extraordinary, and you always have been. So I'm very proud of you and very excited about your new book. Uh, this is Angela DeJoseph, Woman of Color Roar Radio Show. Our guest today has been author Shirley Neal, and hold your book up. And we want you to go out and we want you to get her book, AfroCentric Style. Thank you for coming on the show today, Shirley, and I hope to see you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, and best of luck to you. I'm so proud of you, and it's been my pleasure, Angela.
Thank you. This is KNSJ 89.1 FM in San Diego. Thanks for listening.